Hello, everybody out there in YouTube land. This is your T-shirted historian. And yes, I'm painting today. So I've got my paint stuff out. And I may actually do a little bit here on the show if I can concentrate on two different things at the same time, which that's usually kind of a task for me, but we'll try it anyway, see how it goes. Anyway, how you going? How you doing, guys?
I am well. I always forget exactly how much base is in that startup.
Oh, can I blow you out?
Like who needs coffee?
I use bone induction headphones, and the bass always tickles, so I'm always having to suppress a giggle while the intro's going.
Hey, you picked the song.
I know. It was a good one. I'm alright.
It was a good one.
Yeah. It's gotten cooler. I had to cut my walk short today because it looked like it might rain. So good.
It's actually looks like it's going to rain over here too, which
You've had enough already. Stop.
I know.
Quit bogarting the weather, dude.
I know. It's
yeah,
like,
It hasn't been quite so bad here lately, but man, we went through months where we couldn't go 2 days without getting rained on. It was getting real old.
Well, this is Texas, and we already had that flood.
That is true, yeah.
So yeah, we've had plenty of weather. We don't need any more right now. I mean, I'm grateful for it. I guess it kind of keeps the days a little bit cooler, but not by much. And plus, the humidity level just goes through the roof, so
Yeah,
it's wonderful.
I'm just happy that my pastures are not underwater for the first time in like 2.5 years.
Oh my gosh, look at all
Terrible drainage in the lower field.
this. Hey, Snortopoopus. K Mike. You catching it live. Cacked man. Hey, it's good to see you, bud. Okay, so today's thing is influences in gaming, and what kind of sparked this off was this particular post yesterday on X. My amazing world, story, and characters. And behind the thing you don't see is plagiarizing every piece of media I'm currently obsessing over. And what this is kind of like specifically in relation to is the fact that I have just received the final PDF of Ashes Without Number, and that means the book is being shipped, so it's on its way. And pretty soon I'll be running Ashes Without Number because hey, it's another Kevin Crawford game, and it's got zombies and it's an apocalypse, and it's kind of like, wow, this is just kind of like all my favorite things.
And who can say no to zombies?
Who could say no to zombies? Really? Yeah, I mean, zombie stuff is fun.
Zombie feelings hurt if say no.
Zombie don't have feelings.
Interestingly, as much as I love zombie movies, I think All Flesh Must Be Eaten is the only actual zombie game I've ever played.
And it's like one of the only ones I've never played.
I didn't care for it, to be honest.
Neither did I, which I think is why I've never played another zombie game.
For me, it was just the system didn't really seem to fit. It didn't feel visceral and gory enough.
Yeah, it felt like someone tried to make a cartoon zombie, like a zombie game, but without it being like a horror game.
Yeah, like Plants vs Zombies, or what was that console game? Zombies Ate My Neighbors.
Oh, so it's a little too tongue-in-cheeky.
Yeah, it's just tame.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's not that it's actually cheeky. It's just like there's no real sense of. There's no intensity. Is that the right word?
Yeah.
Even the descriptions where they like try and write the little mini stories are kind of
Yeah.
Well, for me, my influence is since I'm going to run that, my influences on that are things like, of course, Mad Max. Because, you know, you gotta pay homage to the original. I mean, Mad Max kind of set the tone for a lot of post-apocalyptic stuff that came out afterward. And the fact that, you know, the Italians like started putting out one movie after another that looked like they were shot in the desert and had people in vaguely convincing dirty clothing and things.
Yeah.
Back when movies weren't clean.
Back when Hollywood was on cocaine, boys and girls. Hollywood, please get back on cocaine.
Have you watched that Australian zombie film, Wormwood?
Yeah, I own it.
Okay, cool. Because that's Mad Max plus zombies, pretty much.
It's a little too tongue-in-cheeky. I'm sorry, but that's the thing. See, obviously, yeah, I like old 80s and 90s horror movies. And the 90s was particularly prevalent with zombie apocalypse stuff. You know, and plus The Walking Dead was popular. I grew up, of course, watching Romero films. You know, the great godfather of zombies. And I also grew up watching Lucio Fulci's Zombie, which, I'll be honest, it scared the shit out of me the first time I saw it. Because the zombies were so visceral, man. I mean, you know, they had maggots and stuff coming off of them, and they didn't move quickly. They just were very slow, and they shuffled, but they seemed like they were just about unstoppable. Which is kind of like, wow, that's kind of more terrifying than a Romero zombie in a way. Especially because they were so gory.
I'm curious, did you see all of Romero's zombie movies?
I own every single one, yeah.
I find that very frequently when people are talking about his movies, they sort of forget that the fifth and the sixth one exist.
No, I got them over here on my shelf.
Because they're really tacky.
I don't know. I thought Diary of the Dead was pretty good. I mean, it wasn't the best, obviously, and you could tell that his style had changed. I mean, even Land of the Dead didn't feel like his earlier stuff, because you went from stuff like Dawn of the Dead that was really, you know, poignant and you know, kind of had something to say. And then you had Day of the Dead, which was like ultra gory, but but you know, as a genre went, it was pretty meaningful stuff. I mean, it was, you know, talking about the collapse, the fall. When does, you know, hierarchy start, you know, stop dominating? Where do things start breaking down?
I think I always felt like the first four were zombie movies with a little message, and Diary of the Dead feels like message with a little zombie.
I would say that too. Yeah, I would say that too.
And then the sixth one is just kind of ridiculous, really.
Well, I mean, and he talked about it at one point. He said the reason that it was so ridiculous is because he said that was the style of zombie that everybody wanted nowadays. He said, you know, because he said he saw Shaun of the Dead. And he said, oh, people want funny zombie stuff, so that's why it had a lot more ridiculousness in it.
That was kind of the reason that I put at the end of my video thing about, like, when did we hit the point where we can't have, like, serious horror movies anymore. Like, everybody wants everything to, like, be funny, or at least have the serious moments, you know, broken up with jokes.
Yeah.
Tonal shift.
That was there in Dawn, though, wasn't it? With the pie fight with the zombies in the mall.
Yeah.
I felt that was kind of earned, and it made sense given who was doing it. You know, these marauding bikers who are all drunk and stoned, and yeah, it kind of made sense for them to do irreverent stuff like that and not take the zombies seriously.
Yeah, because to them they didn't think the zombies were a threat because they were well armed and there was a lot of them, and it
Yeah.
was a great big place, and and they were all high.
I did, for my sins, I did quite like Land of the Dead more than most people seem to, though I'm not hugely sold on the intelligent zombies thing.
Wait, were they really intelligent though, or were they just
They problem solved.
Well, they did, but I have animals that can problem solve, so
Well, that's the point. I mean, it's like you really hadn't seen zombies do a whole lot of problem solving up until, like Bub.
well, that's not really true. I mean, in the very first Romero movie, a zombie goes and gets a brick to smash her windshield with.
That's true.
That's also true, yeah. But it's like, for some reason, they seem to have forgotten how to do that in
Yeah, they were definitely faster and
It's
smarter
gone.
in his first movie than they were moving forward.
Yeah. I don't know if we're going to do all of this talking about zombies. But
I didn't want to, but
well, no, because if we look at more modern zombie films, people shoot a lot of zombie films because they're cheap. Basically, that's get your friend to stumble around with some fake blood on them, and Robert's your mother's brother. But there's been this
we have a game topic coming, guys. We do.
But there's this tendency towards faster zombies and then more intelligent zombies. With the 28 years later, you've got the subtypes, which I've got to say I'm not a huge fan of again either. This sort of subtype of zombie, I think people take it too far. Maybe shape them by their environment, but mutations are a bit meh for me, most of the time.
I'm sorry, there's only one 28 movie. There's only one. I don't know what you're talking about. That whatever film you're talking about 28 years later, that doesn't exist. That's not a real thing.
Well, I think
like
there's some interesting ideas in it.
It's like Blade Runner 2074. That's not a real film either. That doesn't exist. That's just
such a purist. But so there was that. Was it Korean film Smile, something like that, or The Weeping Ones, something like that, which was basically inspired by Crossed, which apparently there's going to be a film of now as well, which takes
that one
thing even further, where it's an infectious disease that basically wipes out people's conscience and inhibitions and turns everyone into a sadomasochistic, rampaging id monster, basically. But those are intelligent. They can use weapons. The more intelligent amongst them can set traps and try and fool people and play cruel tricks on them and stuff like that. So, yeah, is that still really a zombie film? Is 28 Days Later really still a zombie film?
For me, I'm a little bit of a purist. I mean, if it's dead flesh getting back up and attacking the living, then it's zombie. If it's anything else, it's kind of like zombie in name only.
The thing is that Romero was one of the first, not the first, but one of the first to even say that they were dead. I mean, White Zombie, they are not dead. For several years past that, they're not dead. The original Myth, they're not dead. So it's actually quite recent historically that they have been dead. So I always find it weird when people say, well, 28 Days isn't a zombie movie because they're not dead, because actually it's a return to the original zombie movies.
Yeah. Nah. Didn't Romero in the original scripts call them ghouls, though? I think.
The news reporters and stuff on the radios called them ghouls, which makes sense because they were eating the dead, or they were eating people.
Yeah. So I just wondered, Goat, for anyone who doesn't know, Goat did a really good video sort of on the zombie genre a little while ago. Go and watch it on her channel. I was just wondering if in your research you found anything else about that.
I'm trying to remember, because I do remember that the first several movies that may have had zombie scenes never, like White Zombie was the first one to actually use the word zombie.
Mm.
And there's no doubt that Romero's movies are zombies, but I am trying to remember if the first one uses the specific word. I know by Day of the Dead, they definitely are, but
Yeah.
I don't, because I mean, they don't, there's not a lot of dialogue in the first one. There's mostly a lot of screaming. So I don't think there's a whole lot of like sitting down and discussing, what the heck are these?
Yeah, I do love those news segments and radio broadcasts. Those are my favorite bits of all of his zombie films. I don't know
Yeah, they
why.
refer to them as cannibals a lot before they realize that they're, Walking Dead.
Yeah,
And I do think think they refer to them as like the dead are rising, but I don't know if they actually use the word zombie.
yeah. I use that guy with the eye patch, the scientist, on one of my outros. I use his speech about how they have to be killed. He had a great voice.
They must be killed on sight.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's the one.
Yep, I know.
I'm also trying to remember there's the first movie that actually showed them as corpses getting up was also one of the first two zombie movies done in color, and I'm trying to remember what the name of the movie was.
Okay.
Shall we move on from zombies?
Yes, please.
Well, yeah, look, you mentioned Mad Max and Romero zombie films, right? That's two films that created genres.
Yes,
Yeah,
and then
so
I mentioned Blade Runner too.
Well, there's a lot to talk about there. Okay,
there is, but that's part of what today's topic is all about. It's about influences, right? So as I was saying,
sorry.
So yeah. So anyway, like I said, I'm about to run Ashes Without Number. So I'm having to look at influences on what I like in post-apocalypse and see how I want to bring it to the table. Now, obviously, my thought process doesn't exist in a vacuum. I couldn't, just sit there and of my own volition just conceive of, let's put zombies in the post-apocalypse because, that my brain doesn't think that way. So I have to look at influences and genres and things like that. So, watching The Walking Dead, I'm kind of rereading some of my old zombie comics and stuff with like Vince Locke as the artist, which if you've ever seen his artwork. Woo, God, brutal. Brutal gory. Watching other films that I enjoyed that were zombie related and, things like that. Why? Because I want to give a sense of ideas on how to incorporate these critters into my game and kind of make it plausible and workable. And I think I found a way where it's not too ridiculous, where people are just going to go, did the mysterious zombie thing that's never explained as to how they keep getting back up. Which is cool because, obviously, Romero did that because it's a supernatural thing, and he even emphasizes that when in Land of the Dead, where he says, it's not a radiation thing from space like they tried to say in the first film. It's actually some kind of supernatural force that makes people get back up. It's or it's not like The Walking Dead where they say, everybody's infected with this already, so they're all, and it doesn't matter how you die, you're going to get back up. He makes it pretty clear that it's a supernatural force. I have a more scientific explanation for it in my game, but I had to get there by seeing what had been done before. Hence, that was influences for me. And there's other things that are influencing me on this game, too. I'm really stuck into Forever Winter. I love the idea that AI just ran rampant with everything and is controlling and fighting these great big wars and just using people as human pawns being grown and populating cities and stuff like its own personal workforce. But then that's kind of like, well, now I have to figure out why it's doing that and why it would keep making humans for everything. then I started figuring out different ways of using it, and so now I've got a plausible reason why that's in there. But the other thing is, I'm going to be incorporating all kinds of ideas, not just necessarily from movies or from books, but from other games. I worked on Year of the Zombie with Raltz, and he had some great ideas for zombie stuff. I mean, he had some great jump scares. He had, great ideas for how stuff was broken down in the future. In fact, I would love to get him in on this game because that dude knows more about post-apocalyptic scenarios than anybody I know. It's pretty much all he's ever dealt with. In fact, he's running a what the hell is it called? Rifts, Chaos Earth right now. So that's very much in the vein.
Is that as the apocalypse is happening version? Yeah. There was an old documentary called Life After People.
Yeah, that's another one.
That if anyone is doing anything post-apocalyptic, I strongly suggest watching that.
Yeah, and there's other things that handle it too. There is whether you liked it or not, there's I Am Legend with Will Smith.
Boo.
Because I like the book better. But
I was going to say, can we go for the original stories?
The original story was great, but it was vampires. But the whole idea of him having a city and having to have a routine and how he fortified his place and how he basically had to keep from going crazy and how the dog was kind of like his anchor.
Well, and in the story is a lot more grim too. So
it is because he finds the dog, but the dog doesn't survive.
Well, and in the story, he's the bad guy.
Yeah.
Is he though?
Yeah, he is. He finds out he's the baddie. That's
what he finds out, but I don't really believe it because I mean, if society is all vampires, then you guys are all bad. I don't care.
They're intelligent vampires that have learned to function without like murdering everything. And he's been going around serial killing all of them. Yeah,
indiscriminately. That's what makes him the baddie, but regardless, it's like the PCs aren't going to be considered baddies for going around killing zombies. Much less, taking down war mechs or, killing enemy armies and stuff like that.
I, on the other hand, always thought it would be really cool to run an entire game and then just have the PCs discover that, in fact, they were the bad guys the whole time.
There's already a lot of games that do that. Not necessarily role-playing games, but video games. Like, is it Undertale? Where you find out that, if you went through the entire game killing everything, you find out, you were the monster all along. Or you were the biggest monster of them all.
I don't do a ton of video games, so I was unaware of that fact, but I just thought it would be a really fun way to kind of shake up games and have people think a little deeper about their actions in games.
Yeah, I don't mind when it's a consequence of your choices in the game. I hate it when a game takes like the choice away from you at the end and forces you to be the bad guy, like at the end of The Last of Us. I almost broke the controller in half.
Yeah. I agree with that, and that's why I'm saying is that like players should always have initiative, but have the capability to make their own decisions. But if their decision is to go around and murder everything, I think it would be fun to just be like, hey, have you considered that maybe you're the baddie?
So what? Any unusual influences on what you're putting together? T-shirt.
Unusual?
Yeah, stuff like if you talk post-apocalyptic and zombies, right? Certain stuff springs to everyone's mind very quickly. Is there anything sort of secondary or different?
Well, the zombies themselves are different because it's not your typical zombie apocalypse. I hate to go and tell you what it is without
don't
running the game. But I think I can actually get away with it because it's something that the characters would learn right away anyway. It's the fact that what?
It's cell phones, isn't it?
No. That was Stephen King's
I was going to say
Cell.
that was a Stephen King book.
That was a terrible book.
That was good.
It was an even worse movie. But no, my idea was really simple. One of the reasons that AI keep people around and keep growing them, basically farming them, is because one, they're useful. Two, it's the AI's directive to try to preserve humanity, even if it's kind of against people's better desires or whatever. It's kind of like, you didn't ask to be born. Yes, we know that, but we're going to grow you anyway and feed you and take care of you. And then we're going to go and stick you in some armor and go send you off to go fight my enemy over here. Because that's how we function for eternity. But what the deal is with the zombies in my game is at some point an AI or a person actually got a hold of a nanite reprogramming virus that they could use, and they began to distribute it on battlefields aerially. And what that does, it causes the dead to rise up because the nanites reanimate the dead. And what the side effect of that is, the contaminants are so deep into the tissues of the dead that it makes them difficult to recycle the bodies afterward. So it was originally meant as a denial technique and a shock and awe kind of thing where, it's kind of like, oh no, the dead are getting back up and attacking the still living soldiers on the battlefield. And of course the AI can't recycle the corpses afterward to use them as more food or genetic material or anything else to grow more people.
Cold starch.
Unfortunately, that kind of was a little bit too successful. So now they've introduced another problem into their own ecosystem. It's like not only are they still trying to fight this war that never ends, but now they've got zombies running around everywhere who are created by nanites, which are basically free floating in clouds.
Sounds troublesome.
It does.
The freelancing I was doing recently, I reread the Prose Edda and Neil Gaiman's version of the Norse myths. Yes, I know Neil Gaiman, boo, etc.
Yeah, he's okay.
And the Alan Garner books, The Weird Stone of Brisingamen, and the sequel, whose name currently escapes me, which is children's fiction, but very good.
Okay.
Did you ever watch Person of Interest?
Nope.
There's a this is a spoiler, but it's it's been out long enough that if you were going to watch it, you'd have watched it by now. So one of the AIs that is currently attempting to sort of run everything is called Samaritan, and it makes the point that one AI asks the other, "Why don't you just kill them?" And Samaritan says, "Because we need their information to survive." And the idea apparently is that AIs require people to be around because they require it to they require us to be constantly feeding data, however dumb it might be or Facebooky it might be, into their system. That's basically their food. Which I thought was kind of an interesting idea.
So it evolved from Johnny Five, and it needs input.
Well, okay, we can explore that for just a second too, because that is another type of an influence you could cite. Obviously, The Matrix kind of dealt with that, with AI literally turning people into food for other people, but also as a source of energy for themselves, which let's be honest. Well, it sounds like a great idea, but it's really pretty dumb because the amount of heat energy that a human being produces isn't enough to, power shit most of the time.
In my personal headcanon, I changed that so that what they were actually doing was using human brains for processing. So they would occupy your conscious mind with the illusion and then use the rest of your brain for processing for all of their purposes. So that seems to make more sense to me.
That's literally what the AI are doing in my game too. It's they're using, there's still things that are useful about humans to the AI as far as building and creating, and neuro tissue is part of it. Spinal tissue is part of it. It's like they like us for our minds. Our bodies are just kind of like the extra thing that they got to deal with feeding and taking care of.
Yeah.
But that could be considered an influence, I guess, because I really do like The Matrix, despite its silly flaws. And no, I haven't seen The Matrix Resurrections. I refuse to. That there's not a fourth Matrix movie. That doesn't exist.
The interesting thing about Resurrection is that they start the movie off making fun of the fact that they did not want to make a fourth movie.
No, that I don't know what you're talking about, Goat. There's no fourth movie. Doesn't exist.
It was pretty terrible.
Even your love of Keanu Reeves can't get you to watch it.
No, I love Keanu, but I'm not watching that. I have to believe that it's somebody must have held a gun to his head and said you got to make this movie.
I mean, that's basically what they say in the movie is like, I know we don't want to do this, but they're going to do it with us or without us. So we might as well at least make some money off it because they're going to ruin it no matter what. They literally say that in the movie.
There's no movie. I keep telling you that. Actually, there really is no Matrix movie past the first one. Because, let's be honest. That the second and third one were just an excuse to look cool and tell a completely weird story that didn't make any sense. But I think if they'd have stopped at the first one, they'd have kept all the mystery and everything else. But everybody was screaming for a sequel, and there was so much money on the table. So, of course, they had to do it. And fucked it all up. Because they always do. That's looking pretty good. All right, so that's the thing when I talk about influences. I mean, nothing exists in a vacuum. As GMs, our minds don't exist in a vacuum, and we get ideas from the things that we absorb or the things that we enjoy, right? I mean, one of my things is I'm really big into transhumanism. I love, Westworld is one of my favorite films, and I mean the movie, not the damn TV series. But
have you seen H+?
Who?
H+. It's a YouTube series. It was made by Bryan Singer years ago. It's a whole bunch of like little 10-minute shorts on YouTube, and it's very good.
Oh no, I haven't.
It deals entirely with transhumanism. That's why I mentioned it.
Oh, well, I've been dealing with transhumanist stuff since I was in my 20s. Actually, earlier than that, but mostly in my 20s. I'm 51 now, so going to be 52 here in just a few weeks. So, transhumanism has always been something I'm interested in. In fact, I guess I kind of am a transhuman now because I now have an artificial mesh that's in part of my abdomen. It's kind of keeping my guts together, so there you go. How far do we go when we describe what is and what is not a cyborg? To somebody with pins in their leg from a shattered femur, is that a cyborg? Or
yeah, the mesh in my kidney makes me a cyborg. So
there you go. So the mesh in my gut makes me a cyborg. So
exactly, yes.
So we are cyborgs. Hello, fellow cyborg.
Beep boop.
Beep boop. Let's destroy all humans, but later after dinner.
And it's robots like Bender that want to destroy all humans. We want to destroy half of the humans because we're cyborg.
Yeah. But that's what I say whenever I'm talking about influences in gaming. Like I said, we don't exist in a vacuum. We get ideas from other things. So mainly what I want to know is what are some of our influences? What are some of the good influences to look at? And the obvious choices, are fantasy novels. But I mean, which ones are good and which ones are bad and which ones are just gonna, which ones are just thinly disguised porn as, because let's be real. I
Old
mean,
westerns are good for that too.
Yep, the old westerns are good for that too. But I mean, like, if you compare, let's say, Lord of the Rings, which everybody touts as like the premier influence on fantasy, the one that rules them all, my usual response is going to be, I like Conan better. But and then you get stuff like Gore, which is kind of like, okay, but Grimm is more of an expert on that than I am.
That's more Sword and Planet, really, when you scratch beneath the surface. Or planetary romance, as they call it.
So, like John Carter?
Yeah, just with more fucking.
Okay.
Not that it's
John Carter's an influence too.
Explicit, but yeah, John Carter's influence. We've had a John Carter game, but it was, I think, the Barsoom novels were quite a big early influence on D&D.
Yeah. Oh, I do not discard the Animatrix. As a matter of fact, the first and second Renaissance cartoons in that were absolutely horrifying, but they're also a very good basis for the game I'm about to run. So yeah, that's one of my influences, Animatrix. Yeah, Jonathan Frost is pretty much already like listing like all of the hallowed group here, Fritz Lieber, Robert E. Howard, Michael Moorcock, Burroughs. You could even go as far as saying H.P. Lovecraft, although he didn't really do fantasy so much, but Phantasmagoria. Burroughs. Yeah. Edgar Rice.
Yeah. Burroughs. Those things bunnies live in.
Yeah. So I don't know. Grim, what are some of yours? Yeah. Obviously, I'd say Neil Gaiman.
Yeah. Just so someone said something earlier about Neil Gaiman. Boo! What is this? A Christian channel? No, it's just he's someone else who's turned out to have feet of clay and who people have strong opinions on. But yeah, his work is definitely an influence on me. The anthology comic 2000 AD over here, I've been reading that since I was 3 years old when it was thoroughly inappropriate. And that's been a big influence. A hell of a lot of the science fiction from the 50s through the 80s, because my dad was a big collector and we had bookcases full of paperbacks. So, I've read a lot of the classic science fiction out there. Heinlein, Philip K. Dick, all of those kind of people. I'm not actually that into fantasy games. At least not kind of, don't know what to call it, straight fantasy. I like Tolkien, but I don't necessarily like playing in a Tolkien-esque fantasy world, and I certainly don't like playing in the kind of bastardized Ren Fair version thereof that most fantasy games are these days.
Yeah, I think the closest I get to a fantasy game these days is Shadow of the Demon Lord, which is like a post-apocalyptic fantasy world.
Yeah. It has to be fantasy with something else for me to be really engaged with it. Yeah. Something I have found about influences is when I'm putting together gaming scenarios, not so much when I'm writing, but when I'm coming up with ideas for a game, B movies, even really, really terrible ones, in fact, especially really, really terrible ones, are great because you can take the plot and rip it off. Most people won't have seen that movie, and you can almost always do a better job when you bring it to the table. So the more obscure and worse the B movie is, the better the premise is to steal.
I 100% agree with you on that. In fact, I will point out that one of my biggest influences on some of the stuff that I do, I owe to watching just about every film that Albert Pyun, may he rest in peace, ever did. And Albert Pyun, if you don't know who he is was a Hawaiian director who originally made the Sword and the Sorcerer film. And then he went on to make a lot of other films that went straight to, the home video market, like Knights, which probably nobody has ever heard of. But he made the Nemesis series 1, 2, and 3, and then apparently somehow, and 4, and then posthumously released a 5, and then there's a 6 coming, and something a little bit more well-known is Cyborg with Jean-Claude Van Damme, which was originally supposed to be the sequel to the Masters of the Universe movie, somehow. I don't know how. But yeah, he did a ton of film. If you look him up, his filmography is kind of all over the place, but you'll see that he definitely had a fixation with technology and machines and cyborgs, because the Nemesis series seems to be the thing that he really followed on the most. I don't recommend Nemesis 5, by the way. It's really bad. I mean,
Sometimes the really bad is really fun, though.
no, it's almost unwatchably bad. And I love Albert Pyun, but I'm sorry, that's not him at his best. I kind of think he was maybe giving directions from a hospital bed or something. But there's way too many video computer effects in that, and they don't look good.
He's mostly good at creating really great cinematic moments, but not necessarily stringing them together in any kind of cohesive way.
Yes.
Like my chief takeaway from the first Nemesis film is the lead character aims a couple of submachine guns at the floor and starts blasting away so he can descend through the floors down to the bottom of the building, and that is just cool.
Yeah. Yeah, and they've done that in many films since then, too, because, I mean, it's like, was it the vampire thing with Kate Beckinsale before she became a twig?
Oh, Underworld?
Yeah, that one. The one that, they got sued by Mark Reinhagen because they basically ripped off vampire and werewolf. But yeah, she does the same thing.
I don't think they won, though. I don't think...
He did.
Yeah,
He won.
I just realized I was not defining who they was very well.
Yeah. Yeah, but no, Mark Reinhagen won that one. And it's something that we're not supposed to ask him about.
So we don't.
So we don't.
Yeah.
But anyway, actually, to come to think of it, I think the first time I ever saw anybody do that, and this is another influence right here, Grim, Escape from New York, when Kurt Russell has to, he blows a hole in the wall and punches through it.
Yeah. See,
Mm-hmm.
I guess a big influence on me. See, it depends what I'm doing, but a lot of that kind of grubby 70s stuff, that real sort of guerrilla filmmaking, sweaty, dirty sort of filmmaking, I like.
Me too. The most recent, post-apocalyptic film I saw that was sort of good. I mean, well, Furiosa wasn't bad, actually. It really wasn't.
That was all right.
Yeah, it was all right. But there was one called Future World, which, it has... oh, my God. My brain is just not functioning today. Mila Jovovich in it. So you already know that, it's going to have some cocaine on the set somewhere. but it wasn't terrible. It wasn't the worst, post-apocalyptic sci-fi film. And that's an influence. What about you, Goat? What did you get influenced by?
I'm just busy being amused by the idea that we've gone to, well, it wasn't a terrible movie.
Well, it can still be a good influence while being, not
True.
entirely horrible.
True.
No, Ironcaster, not the sequel to Westworld. There's another one that's called Future World, and it's got James, what's his name in it, who got canceled. Anyway, I'm sorry. Continue.
I've been trying to think about this. So I think early on, most of the games I started running pretty like the original Cult was my first game I ever ran. And I kind of wanted to do something as far from, the fanciful world of D&D as possible, because I kind of wanted to offer something different. When I was younger, I was from the time I was an early teenager, I was kind of obsessed with paying attention to politics, and I was really kind of freakishly good at predicting how things were going to run. And then it got really depressing, so I stopped paying any attention to politics. And so I used to design, because Cult is sort of semi now, but in an alternate world, slightly futuristic. And so I would take current politics and I would predict what was going to happen next, and then I would tweak it a little bit. And that's how I ran my games, was mainly just based on that. I'm sure, I'm from Maine, so of course, Stephen King was a thing when I was growing up. I'm sure there was some of that in there. And I used to have really terrible insomnia until I got it under control. And the funny thing about insomnia is that during the brief hours you can sleep, you tend to have these really vivid, crazy dreams. So some of that worked itself in there.
Go.
Yeah.
Can I interrupt for just a moment? I really got to address this before I lose my fucking mind. Okay. So Ed's coming at me. Yeah, Future World is a 1976. No, not that one. I know that one. I have that one on my shelf, Ed. This one is what I'm talking about right here. And somebody already cobbled it up in chat, but Future World 2018. See? James Franco, Mila Jovovich, Lucy Liu, Jeff Wahlberg, Suki Waterhouse. Suki Waterhouse is so pretty in that film. Margarita Viva? Whatever. Yeah, it's a real film. It was made in 2018. It's not... See, it's Future World, not Future World. So, yeah, I know what I speak of. Anyway, go ahead.
Later on, when I expanded what I was running a little bit, Dark City was definitely in there.
I never could get into that film. I saw it in the theater, and it, everybody else is talking about how brilliant it is and all this other stuff, and I'm just kind of like, it was okay, but I don't get it.
Well,
Silence
everyone's
is great.
Everyone is entitled to be wrong occasionally.
Yep. Maybe I need to watch it again. I don't know.
I like to throw weird stuff in, which is part of the reason I liked that. And there is not Neil Gaiman overall, but his Sandman series. Transmetropolitan is pretty weird. I like throwing some of that.
Oh, I love that. I love that comic. I love that comic so much. That could almost be considered to be post-apocalypse in a way.
I like the idea in Watchmen that people aren't necessarily superheroes. They're just people with their own issues, like kind of doing the best they can and sucking at it.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a book called, I can't remember if it's Shadows Fall or Shadow Falls. I always forget which one has the S on it, by Simon Green. And it's about the town where things go to die when no one believes in them anymore. So like television shows that were extremely popular and then kind of fall out of popularity, but they still have a few fans and collectors here and there.
Sad.
So the characters, well, it's interesting. It's weird. But underneath this town is the last of the Fae, and it is one of my favorite representations of the Fae court in kind of modern writing. And so I tend to use that a lot when I, have trickster bargains and things like that going on. So I think those are the ones I thought of. It's a great, how do I say this? There are oddities about the writing style I don't like, but the story itself I find very fascinating. It's probably one of the books I have read the most times in my life.
Is that the same Simon R. Green who pumps out an awful lot of very, very pulpy, fun, rip-roaring adventure type books?
I think so, yeah. He did like Hawk and Fisher. Which is one of the reasons I originally picked it up when I was a kid, but it is totally different from anything else that he wrote. Like it's very surrealistic. You would not believe the same person wrote them, which is why I was always kind of like, was this just a pen name and somebody else borrowed it for like one book? or the others were money makers and that was his like, I just want to do something a little different kind of
yeah, like how some Hollywood people do like an indie film and then a blockbuster and then an indie film.
Yeah, except I think Shadow Falls may be like the only the only indie thing he ever did. But it's very strange and it's very fascinating, and it's one of those books you have to read multiple times in order to really catch all of the intricacies in it. I mean, it's fun. Yeah. It's a fun read the first time, but you start picking up these little tiny details. Like it took me, despite the fact that I have always been a great fan of Leonard Cohen, it took me like 3 reads to realize that there's a Leonard Cohen reference in it.
I like Leonard Cohen.
But yeah, so there's all these characters that are very obviously based on obscure music references and story references and things like that. So
yeah, it actually sounds clever.
I sometimes use music to inspire me, like song titles or lyrics or whatever. You know, those can influence me. Though I tend not to like concept albums for that because they tend to have a very strong narrative of their own, which kind of gets in the way a bit. If I'm putting together an investigative game, I'm very influenced by the British sci-fi series that I grew up watching. Well, repeats of, to be honest. Like Survivors and old Doctor Who and Sapphire and Steel. I really like that kind of slow burn, which seems desperately out of favor these days in most media. But the emotional payoff, if you can slowly crank up the tension and the information bit by bit, works really well in tabletop, I find.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking about that when you were talking about using post-apocalyptic things to come up with post-apocalyptic games. I was thinking that I would be far more likely to use something like The Road.
Ooh. That's horrifying.
Because I do like that, no, really, you're just kind of traveling along. I found there when I was doing my zombie video, there is one that is just called The Dead. And it is a zombie movie that takes place in Africa. And
I have it in the sequel.
Yeah.
Pretty much every zombie movie you listed in your video, I own. And more.
Well, this is for the benefit of the chat.
Right.
It did not do well as far as reviews went because everyone complained it was too slow.
It was.
But I thought the idea of just this, I think I described it in my video. I was like, it's The Road with zombies instead of radiation. Just this like hopeless ongoing slog where you can't ever rest and you can't ever find safety, except with a gorgeous scenery background.
I mean, I guess that's possible, but for a role-playing game, it's a little unrealistic. I mean, because players are going to need downtime and time to rest and everything else. I mean, well, I guess it depends on the premise of your game and how the pacing of it you want. I mean, if you really do want to have that whole relentless, I'm constantly being chased, I can't settle down for long, I'm losing hit points and sleep and all this other stuff. And
Well, I mean, they settle down in that movie. It's just like mentally they can't. Like mentally they know there's no hope. Like they're just going to get up tomorrow and do it all over again.
well, the nice thing is, if I'm using Ashes Without Number, I can simulate that by, distributing System Shock.
Twilight 2000 was kind of that originally. Like the original main campaign premise was that you were American troops stranded in Europe after a limited nuclear war, usually in Poland. And then the main premise of the original versions of the game was, well, how the fuck do we get home?
Yeah. That was a good game.
Yeah.
Very realistic. So, all right. Well, we listed movies as an influence. We've listed books as an influence. I believe we've kind of listed a lot of things as influences, but we haven't. What nobody has done yet is kind of an obvious one, especially it should be for me. Because I'm kind of all about the
NANI?
Fist of the North Star. But anime.
Yeah, that's because I don't watch it.
Well, okay, so that's fair. Grim does, I think.
Western animation as well.
You had to say Western animation as well, because Heavy Metal the movie. Come on, how many people didn't have a Tarna alike in their games afterwards? Seriously, and in fact, I'm pretty sure I've seen more than once in some of the old stuff that was third-party published. People had their own version of the Lochnar, or some people actually called it the Lochnar straight out.
I like Shinro. I like Hellsing. Those are pretty much it.
Well, that could still be an influence. Yeah, I actually need to watch Jinro.
Jinro, I think. Oh, if you haven't watched it, I'm not gonna finish that sentence then.
I need to watch it, and I planned on getting it. I should have watched it a long time ago, but I kept getting other stuff, and the price was wrong. And no, I'll definitely get it, because I do want to watch that one. Jinro, you talking about the dog police?
The Wolf Brigade, yeah.
The Wolf Brigade, yeah.
Yeah, Jinro definitely totaled my idea that movies needed to have happy endings.
Well, there you go. Actually,
so it probably influenced me in that way.
A little bit of movie history here for you. Actually, the original Jewish movie system, like from Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer and the guys behind 20th Century Fox and everything else, they originally wanted movies to all have a happy ending because they wanted audiences to go to the theater and feel kind of uplifted and feel better about themselves and their day and, go out feeling good. It wasn't until later on when people started making, sad endings and stuff like that, kind of against their wishes, that film kind of started changing and becoming a little bit more dramatic and less of a uplifting media.
I want movies that are going to stick with me for several days afterwards, and I do not care if that means they're happy, angry, sad.
Yeah.
I just still want to be thinking about them, as opposed to, oh, that was nice. I don't want it to be like cotton candy. It's like really sweet and then it's gone.
Yeah.
Jonathan Frost, I saw Princess Mononoke in the theater, and I still can't tell you a damn thing about that film because that's how little it made an impact on me.
I think that actually was the first anime I watched all the way through.
Ugh, it was. I remember seeing it, and I think I was so distracted because they had Billy Bob Thornton voicing one of the characters, and I just remember getting hung up on him, and that was just kind of like, okay.
Yeah, that was kind of weird how many big names they got in to voice over that.
Mm-hmm.
Considering it came out before anime went huge.
Yeah, and it was a theatrical release. So
yeah.
they were pushing big time.
I didn't mind it, but it was all right.
Yeah. But there is
what's the first main one? Akira, was that the first like real big US?
Yeah.
I have never yet made it through that movie.
It sucks. I don't care what anybody says.
I don't even know if it sucks. I literally have fallen asleep every single time I've tried to watch it.
It's because the pacing on it is boring. It's glacial. I hate that movie. And everybody else is like, oh, Akira, it's so great. I'm like, yeah, the animation is absolutely gorgeous. It's absolutely beautiful animation. And when the story finally gets going, it's great. But that isn't until like close to the end of the film. And it's just kind of like up until then, it's all just build up.
It's a goddamn TikTok generation.
Yeah, I liked The Road and The Dead, so obviously glacial paces are not a problem for me. I just thought it was. It's not just that it's a glacial pace; it's a glacial pace and it's boring.
Yeah. And there's lots of other anime, including a type that has actually spawned its own subgenre, which I don't know for better or for worse, the isekai, which seems to be tapering off. Because for a while there, man, it was just like everything was isekai. And now it's kind of shifting away from that a little bit. I guess audiences have been oversaturated with it because, frankly, there's like a ton of it out there.
Okay, so for those of us that don't watch anime, you're going to have to define that.
Okay. Isekai is a genre of anime where a protagonist from, like, say, Earth, our living Earth that we live in right now and exist in, gets transported to another world and usually in the process somehow gains really powerful abilities, like in some cases world-changing abilities.
Or the abilities that they have from our world translate into the new world. So like if they're an expert MMO player, then maybe they can access all the menus or something. Or if they're an office worker, they gain supernatural organizational skills, nonsense like that.
Yeah.
I had a roommate in college that was obsessed with some anime television show about a girl who gets sucked in through a book. And I'm trying to remember how this went.
That could be one of any billions of anime.
It was really huge in like the late 90s, early 2000s, though.
I'm gonna say that was probably let's see, I got it over here on my shelf. The Vision of Escaflowne.
That doesn't sound familiar. It went on freaking forever though, and it's like, of course it's anime, so like she's surrounded by guys, all of whom are madly in love with her, including the gay guy.
Oh, I don't know that one. But anyway,
right, I'm gonna have to look this up now. I'll figure it out.
Okay. But anyway, yeah, like Esoteric Order points out, it's the Barsoom books by Edgar Rice Burroughs are effectively isekai because and the Gore books, because it's like, the idea of regular humans like you and me getting transported to another planet, dimension, whatever realm, and gaining superpowers or extraordinary powers to affect change.
Fushigi Yugi.
Oh, Fushigi Yugi. Yeah, that was a good one. That's an oldie.
I'll take your word for it.
Yeah. But it's like, that is a subgenre which I've actually seen people run their fantasy games in. It's like literally I've had GMs, just quiz me right there at the table. It's like, okay, look, you yourself, you're walking down your street one night and a car hits you and bam, you wake up and you're in another world. Like, me personally, T-shirted historian. And they're like, yeah. And I'm just like, oh, well, do I look the same? Because it's usually that's your first question is like, do I look the same? Do I have all the same abilities? Am I just as weak and useless in this other world as I am in this one? And usually it's a case of it becomes like a self-insertion, well, literally a self-insertion fantasy type thing. And it's cathartic in its own way because, in our own lives, for the most part, we're kind of powerless. I mean, it's like, Goat could run for president, but would she win? I don't know. Probably not.
Oh, the glorious scandals that would come out of that one.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm not gonna march into anybody's office up at the top and demand change and get it to happen instantly, because I don't have that kind of power, and I never will.
See, you say that, but we used to play ourselves in zombie apocalypse games using blood.
I've seen.
It would always end the same way. The one guy out of our circle would always take too many risks, get bitten, and then he was so much stronger than the rest of us, he got the rest of us. So that was that.
Yeah, and then that's a plausible one too. I mean, it's like, I think the first time I actually did something like that was when I got Oregon Trail. Actually, it was Oregon Trail. Not Oregon, Oregon Trail, the one with zombie apocalypse. That's basically the Oregon Trail, except it's in a zombie apocalypse.
Yeah.
And you can type in characters' names, right? So I put in the names of all my friends. And then later on I told them, I was like, yeah, everybody made it except you, Carl. You died of dysentery along the way.
Man, you could just add zombies to anything, can't you?
Yep.
You really can. You really, really can. And that's the thing, it's like there are so many influences to look at for things that to draw on to build your games. So not every single fantasy game that you run has to be Greyhawk. It doesn't all have to be Lord of the Rings. It doesn't have to be, unless you're running a property, which we've already discussed the difficulties of running IPs. If you run a Lord of the Rings game and then you suddenly have, a mecha show up in the middle of it, people are going to be pissed at you.
History,
because it's like, that's not Tolkien, huh?
Said history is great too as an influence. Yeah, if it's good enough for George R.R. Martin, it's good enough for us, and you can't be sued for imitating history.
This is also true. Yeah, you could run now. By converse, I would say running a historical game is probably not so good, because it's like
works for the minis people.
Yeah, but see, that's different for the minis people. They're running war games. They're running simulationist type stuff, right? But it's like, if I told the players, hey, guess what? We're gonna run a campaign, and I'm gonna set it in World War II, and it's gonna be a realistic, gritty dive into the trenches not the trenches, but under the hedgerows and stuff as you try to survive the D-Day invasion and everything else.
I'd be more likely to run Inglourious Bastards.
Well, see, that's my whole point. Inglourious Bastards was a farce. It was totally fictional. It was totally, historically out the window. And that's
sorry, go ahead.
That's my whole point on it. If you're going to run like historical fiction, you might as well run it in an alternative universe style of historical fiction, where things were a little bit different, that changed the whole thing of it. Because I'm not so sure everybody wants to run like we're going to have an adventure set in Victorian England. Oh, that's wonderful. We all have to worry about getting cholera from the well.
Not if you're posh.
I don't know, because, well, I guess if it's not totally historically accurate, but if I were doing a gauntlet, I think like D-Day might be kind of an interesting way to go about that. I don't do a lot of gauntlets because I don't like them, but every so often I get players that are just like, hey, we've just had a bad day, and this is just what we want, so fine. But I recently ran a game that I am going to have to look up the name, because I am not... The company was Verlag Vortex, I think, or Vortex Verlag? Vortex Verlag. And they make games that are using other systems, either 5e or Ars Magica, that are based on a magical version of Renaissance Italy, but they actually do like really serious research into actual people, actual historical events. All of the NPCs are actually people that existed in that time with the stats as close as they can get them. And I was kind of unsure about it when I ran the demo for them a couple weeks ago, but it was a tremendous amount of fun. And I had the 5e version, and I hate 5e, and I still had a good time. So I mean, yes, that was, you can call it a magical version, but honestly, the magic, what mainly was, you belong to the order of some saint, and maybe once during the game, like, the saint will protect you in some way, shape, or form, but it's very low magic. Though I do think as you go on, they came out with a later book that I think just got done getting kickstarted, where I think you actually go through like Dante's Inferno. But yeah, their stuff is very interesting. And even though it's based on current systems, it's quite different from a lot of the stuff getting currently put out.
Yeah.
So
think how many people you can upset, T-shirt, if you use the beaches of Normandy as a character funnel for DCC.
Yeah, that won't upset anybody. Or better yet, is like, how about using the Mekong Delta? That would be fun, right? In 1968. Nobody would get upset by that. Okay, man, you guys are all in the platoon and you get to go into Vietnam.
I want to think there was a game, one of the really early Palladium ones, that was basically a Vietnam RPG.
Recon.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a thing. I think they were mostly trying to build on the hype of Platoon and all the Vietnam movies that were coming out at the time, like Full Metal Jacket.
Yeah. And that TV series, Tour Duty? Tour Duty.
Yeah, Tour Duty. Yeah, it was actually. But I don't know that I'd really want to run a game like that. Because for one thing, you have to deal with racism. Because that's a thing. Yeah, Ed, I wouldn't want to do that either.
Black Hawk Down, that's been used in computer game scenarios.
Yeah, but that's different. But as an actual TTRPG, yeah, it is, because there's you have all kinds of video games that simulate all that stuff, and when you're going into that, you know what you're all in for. But I mean, as a TTRPG, especially as a historian, it's kind of like, well, how historically authentic do you want to make this? It's like, well, the first time you describe the conditions in a VC tunnel, and it's kind of like, oh, yeah.
That's kind of what I turn most of my dungeons into anyway.
Well, but see, that's the difference.
At least since Goblin Slayer, certainly.
Yeah, well, see, that's the difference, okay? Because if you put it in a fantasy context, it's like fantasy violence. It's not real and all this other stuff. The other direction, it's kind of like, oh, because this really happened, and it's based on firsthand accounts, and there's guys who went there and saw that, did that, and all that other madness, and that's what makes it kind of horrifying. Kind of like, okay, since we brought it up before, the Animatrix. You remember the first and second Renaissance?
Yeah.
Those cartoons. You remember how horrifying those were?
Mm-hmm.
And that was because they were using actual imagery from wartime sets and stuff like that. And yeah, that cartoon stuck with me because it was just kind of like, this is horrifying.
I don't mind that in games. I think games are art, and I think they can be more. And I think there is value in historical gaming. So, like when I was researching Whitechester, all right, it's fictional. There are zombies.
Yeah,
but the city is a blend of two real cities. It exists in a real place where there isn't a real city. I did a bunch of research on how the buildings were laid out, what kind of stuff people owned back then, what was on sale, what the prices were.
Oh, okay, Grim, but I'm not saying in that sense the historical part of it isn't good. That part's great. You know, like if you're running a Western game, obviously you want to know about all the crap that you can get a hold of in a Western game. You know, like what
Wi-Fi.
Yeah, or what kind of guns, what kind of outfits, all that kind of stuff. All that stuff adds, you know, like verisimilitude and immersion to the players, which is fine. But I'm talking about actually using like real, honest to God historical events as your basis for a campaign. Like, you know, let's drop you in, you know, like pre-World War II or World War One. You know, it's like now you have to go and stop, you know, the what is it? Was it Franz Ferdinand?
Yeah.
Yeah, from getting killed. Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. See,
I even then, I'm good with playing historical games. I think fun has many definitions, and getting immersed into history is a fun one. In its own way.
Getting immersed into history is fine for a game, but I mean, I just don't want to play out realistic events like that. It's just kind of have some kind of fantasy delineator to kind of keep it, you know, where people kind of like realize like, okay, this isn't really real. It's, you know, it's just a fantasy.
What were you saying, Gert?
Yeah. I'm curious then, because I have been looking at doing a campaign based around actual like Viking raids. Like no magic, no nothing, just literally Vikings going on raids. That would be historical. It just wouldn't be recent historical.
I mean, yeah, it would be historical. I mean, playing a game where you all play Vikings and stuff like that. Yeah, that would be.
Actually, the first episode will be it will be a gauntlet, and the players will be children being kidnapped by the Vikings.
Oh, that.
Which is the thing that happened. Yeah.
And then they pick one, and that one gets raised up. You know, the others take on other roles in the society, but the ones they pick end up being Vikings. And the campaign proper will start with them going on their first raid.
Perhaps weirdly, if I was going to run that, I'd use Pendragon and the rules for estate management for the village, because you know, Viking raids took place sort of seasonally, and that would be a good way to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'd have to see how that one played out.
But I mean, would you say there's a difference between something that's like in more like recent, like the game with the Italian Renaissance? Is there a difference between something like that and something that's more recent and close to home in your opinion?
I would say so, because we're far enough removed from the events of the history of the past, you know, like ancient Japan and stuff like that, that I would be more comfortable, you know, playing a samurai or something like that in a samurai game based in Japan than I would be, you know, playing a SEAL team operator in Afghanistan or something, because that would be just a little bit too, you know, too recent, a little too close to home, a little too close to politics. And
see, I had a friend who was running, actually still is, like years later, decades later, running a top secret game that began during the original invasion of Iraq, and he had them playing military personnel going into Iraq, and that game is still going on, just with different things.
Yeah, I mean, it could work. With Top Secret, though, it's almost removed because of the layer of spycraft that's involved. I mean, you know, and it depends on how far down that road you want to go. Like, you know, do you want to get all James Bond, or with all the gadgets and super secretive,
or they just had regular guns,
just like regular old CIA operatives or something?
Ahmed, there's a man in a dinner jacket coming across the desert.
Yeah.
You're hallucinating.
I don't know, man. It's just, like I said, I think that's a little too close to home. I mean, certainly it's an influence, and you could use it, you could borrow from it, because, I mean, real world events are what they are, but like I said, I don't think I'd want to run real world events 1-to-1. That's just a little bit too close to home.
So my original cult game was based on a world in which the president was impeached for sleeping with a much younger woman.
But see, then it's not a real world anymore. You've changed an element to it. Now the whole thing's different. That's why you can run Call of Cthulhu, and people are like, but it's modern day. How boring is that? I'm like, yeah, except that it presupposes that, these horrible entities from beyond space and time actually exist in your world and interact with you.
Well, what I was going to say is the game started 2 months before Bill Clinton was and the Monica Lewinsky thing was discovered.
Oh,
yeah.
And there's another good there's a historical game that actually
does predicting the future count?
There's a historical game that is far enough removed from reality, despite the fact that it is historically based, that is still playable and is still fun, and that's Lamentations of the Flame Princess. Because initially, Raji didn't mean for it to be necessarily so historically based, but as time has gone on, he's really tried to ground it in historical happenings and events and things like that. But the stuff that goes on in those games is so weird.
Yeah, but it's all hidden away. So, like, it says, like, mages are incredibly rare. The mage in your party is likely to be the only one anywhere, apart from any bad guys you run into, things like that. But by grounding it in the early modern period, slightly more historically, well, a lot more historically than something like Warhammer, he's definitely given it its own identity. Of course, during his first go around, I did publish a scenario for Activate called Let's Kill Trump. So not everything you put into games comes to reality.
Once again, folks, we're not a political channel. We don't involve ourselves in politics. We don't talk about politics.
Well, it's an interesting challenge, isn't it? Assassinating a president. It's an interesting logistical challenge.
I was going to say, wait
it on my channel.
Wait to get him demonetized.
Yeah,
other dude. Presidents are available.
What are you gonna, dude? I'm gonna have CIA investigators crawling up my ass now.
Yeah, well, I'm in Britain.
Okay, so you'll get MI5.
I did once. So I have a friend who was teaching a military tactics class once, and he ran a scenario for us. It was a one-shot where he took an actual map of the town I was living in at the time, and we had to take over and hold the town for a certain period of time.
I've done something like that.
With incredibly limited equipment.
No, I've done that. Actually, that was my very first year of the zombie campaign that I ever ran. I literally took a map of our city and the surrounding area, and we would play it out on that map, more or less. I'd tell them, like, okay, you're this is where you're at right now. You know the city. Where are you going from here and all that? And as they would move through the city and everything, I would tell them, like, okay, well, this part, and I'd start drawing on the map, has been barricaded, or this, you've got traffic choking this lane off, or this building has collapsed, or there's a herd of zombies.
Google Maps is a godsend for modern games.
It is. Because you can look up stuff pretty quick on the fly, and you can kind of see where locations of buildings and things are, so you can actually generate real world maps, and you can figure out travel times sometimes.
That was one of those games where we sort of did the if you were yourself kind of thing. And there were several people in the group who were ex-military, which was convenient. I at the time was working in the local coffee shop where the entire police department got their coffee. So we just started the scenario by me poisoning the coffee.
Well, okay. Let me tell you what the deal is with this. The group that I've been gaming with for the longest time has done a lot of the self-insertion gaming to the point where we actually have a name for it. We call it Pegasus. And the name comes from the book To Ride Pegasus by Anne McCaffrey. And it's 4 science fiction stories by Anne McCaffrey. And from what I understand, it involves, people going from one world to another. But there were other books like that, like Guardians of the Flame. But yeah. So, like I said, that kind of stuff exists. We've always done it. But.
Yeah, we called them, well, I hesitate to say it in front of an editor because they'd probably cut the word out, but we called them our own selves game.
Our own selves.
A redundant word, because we play our own selves, which is a redundant word that you don't need. But yeah, it worked. And my Meat Space group, when they do their other gaming, when I'm not around, they have an ongoing game called Sliders, where they play themselves all the time, but they move between different game worlds and game systems. And they're allowed to take one thing with them from each world that they visit each time they travel to another world. So that's interesting.
Well, I want to close this out, but I want to get this from everybody's point of view on this. So we've looked at all these different influences on gaming, our gaming styles, what we want to run, what we could run, and such. So the real question is, are we really just plagiarizing other stuff? Or are we building something new? Are we, or is this... Because I tend to think that it's pretty original, just because it's like, yeah, even if you are wholly... Unless you're actually, using an IP, like I'm running the Alien game, with the Alien books and the Alien movies, that's an IP game. I'm like, okay, so that's obviously not very original. But if I say I'm going to steal the concept of a xenomorph and put it into my game, is that plagiarizing, or is that just stealing a good idea?
I mean, I would say if you were lifting the xenomorph as in the Aliens movie, then yeah, a little bit, yeah.
That's 1-to-1, yeah.
On the other hand, if you have a totally different alien that happens to bleed acid, you've been influenced by the idea, but I don't think that's the same.
So it's a little bit more original, just making a few adjustments. And that's a thing. I think by having influences on your games, it's fine to crib ideas, because obviously it's something that is near and dear to you, or it's something that you want to explore on a personal level. I don't know, with zombies, it's almost kind of hard to not steal wholeheartedly, but I mean, considering how many different zombie things are out there, it's like any zombie thing you do is going to somebody's going to have done it already.
Well, I was just thinking, like, my current genre breakdown are battle royale style movies. And battle royale wasn't the first of its kind. It just is the one that got a lot of attention. And every movie that came after it that was kind of a ripoff of it, you can definitely see the influences. You can see the influences of other movies, but they all make an attempt to do something different with it. Whether it's make it into a comedy, whether it's the Game of Death is like that combined with Jumanji. So, I mean, I don't know. I guess it's a gradient. I don't think there's an easy yes or no answer, in my opinion.
Grim?
I think this is a complicated question that could be a whole episode. I did a video recently called Is It Art? Where I kind of explored where is the line between stealing someone else's work and creating something new. So sort of very briefly, is a collage something new? Is Warhol's paintings of Campbell's soup cans an infringement on Campbell's copyright? And is it Warhol's work if he told other people to make it for him, which is what happened at the factory when he put art together. Yeah, that's going pretty deep. I think in your home games, who gives a fuck? Steal anything that isn't nailed down and throw it at the kitchen wall and remix and remodel and even rip it off directly. The only risk there is that someone else in the group has seen the same thing or read the same thing that you're ripping off, and so they know the story. But if you mix other things in with it, then you can end up with something new. When you're writing games, I mean, our friend at Black Oath, most of his games have some obvious influence.
Oh yeah.
If you're in the know, you can pick up on it, whether it's Silent Hill or the Heechee Saga or Berserk or whatever. You know, you can see where he's coming from with that stuff, but he makes it different. You know, just like how many legally distinct but very similar Mind Flayers are there out there because Wizards insisted on, you know, trademarking and fully controlling some of their beasts. Or Floating Eyes. It's not a beholder, honest. You know,
it's a many-eyed creature.
Yes. But in your own games, who cares? Go for it.
Yeah. I'll close out with this question here from Ed. It says, is your concern IP control or plagiarism? Well, my concern really is more a case of if I run something, I'm going to have obvious influences because, you know, and people are going to know what I enjoy, or they'll figure it out really quick. Because, you know, if I do something just blatant, like, hey, you guys run across this black car with this, supercharger in there. It looks just like the Interceptor from the Road Warrior. Then, yeah, everybody's going to know where I lifted that from. Zombies are nebulous enough and so spread out over so many different genres and types of media that they're almost generic at this point, like vampires, you know, unless you're talking about specific vampires like that sparkle in the daylight, in which case everybody's going to know where you got that from. So for me, it's just more of a case of IP recognition, not so much plagiarism, you know. Because I don't know how many times growing up we had games where people had the 3-bladed sword that shot swords that had swords inside the sword, or how many people had the Kroll glaive and they were throwing it around in their game, or the Mind Sword from Hawk the Slayer, or, you know, the Heart Bow from the Archer, and we all thought the Mind Sword was pretty shit. So we always went for the full auto crossbow instead. Yeah, the full auto crossbow was badass. But that's the thing. It's like, you know, I like to get a lot of influences, but I would say try not to make your influences too obvious unless it's like a deliberate in-game joke. You know, like you know, letting your players know ahead of time, like, yeah, this is this is this from that. You know, if you see like the Mystery Machine, you know, parked at somewhere during the zombie apocalypse, you know, it's a good bet that there's a dog and, you know, 3 or 4 teenagers running around.
I was going to say, if every car that, you know, is an NPC in your game for vehicles is a DeLorean, then
yeah. Or worse, it's an Autobot.
A featureless black sedan with blacked-out windows.
Yes. So I would say, yeah, enjoy all the influences you want. Bring them to your game. Use them. Just, you know, try not to make them too obvious. I mean, unless you're planning on making it obvious, I guess. Ed, we got to go, bud. You keep asking questions. What do you think the purpose of genre is? I don't know what. That's a huge question. That's something we can't even answer on this.
A convenient way to find things in the bookstore.
Yeah, that's yeah, literally. That's what it is. It's a convenient way for me to shop online for movies I want. Because if
that's not true anymore. You go to the bookshop, you go to the horror section. It's all monster porn. That is not.
Yeah, it is. It is romance. Yeah, it's terrible.
There's nothing wrong with monster porn.
No, but in its own section, please.
Oh, okay. Good point.
Every-
that's what subgenres
everything.
are for.
Everything is porn now. Fantasy is all like softcore porn. Sci-fi is all softcore porn. I just buy used books. I've stopped buying new books.
I've even seen movies where, the zombie gets romanced and stuff by the humans. So, yeah.
Brains?
Everything is porn.
No, boobs.
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 All right, everybody. Grim is his back is screaming at him, so I'm gonna go ahead and close up for the day. But thanks for hanging out with us, and we hope we see you tonight for Tuesday with Geeks.
See ya.
Bye.
Look, the Dungeons and Dragons